Hey, you guys, it is Lisa Nicole Alexander with another episode of A Deeper Look into Domestic Violence. We are super excited that you decided to join us, and we have an amazing guest here for you guys today. Her name is Sheila Petnuch Fields, you guys. She is a survivor, a beautiful woman, and she has her own organization called Awakened Women. So welcome, Sheila. I'm so glad that you're here.
Well, thank you very, very much, Lisa, for welcoming me to your podcast. Thank you for all the work that you do at Stand Up Survivor. I'm really honored to be here and to be able to share today and hopefully help a lot of women that need to hear this.
Yes, first of all, that was so sweet. So thank you. I appreciate that. And absolutely, I truly believe that if you are sitting here with me, there's a woman that needs to hear what you have to say. And her life literally depends on it. And I know you take that just as seriously as I said it. So I'm not going to keep you too long. I just want to hear what you have to say. Talk to us. Tell us about Sheila.
Okay. Well, as I look back over my life, I see now that my life has run on parallel themes of abuse and resiliency.
That's interesting.
This began when I was in my childhood home. Okay. My dad was an alcoholic. Okay. He was scary, violent, lots of trauma and terror growing up. I was afraid most of the time. I don't have to go into all the details of having to run out of the house and different types of things, or not being able to fall asleep at night, waiting for him to come back home from the bars. But that was where I grew up. Now, my mom, she did finally divorce my dad. I was about 11, and it was a night that he actually was choking her, and I witnessed that in the kitchen. And that was the last night that he was in our home. So my growing up years were pretty traumatized. Now, I did have the blessing of living in a two-family house owned by my maternal grandparents. And they were wonderful. And my papi was a surrogate dad. Also, just to throw this in there, because God does work in mysterious and miraculous ways, 10 years before my dad died, he was diagnosed with cirrhosis, and he completely quit smoking and drinking and became a man. It really was like he became the man that he had always been meant to be. Became a great grandfather, was very good to me, especially after I became a single mom, became a dear friend of my mother's. So it was amazing transformation that we had those last 10 years of his life.
Well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think I love to hear a redemptive story like that, because like you said, God can do anything. Change can happen for anyone. And sometimes it takes something so significant like a diagnosis to change things. Yeah. And I love how you said he became a dear friend even to your mom.
Yeah, it really was amazing, and it was really healing. And again, abuse is something that goes from generation to generation to generation. So he grew up with a very violent, even a more violent alcoholic dad. Okay. And witnessed a lot of horrible, horrible stories that my mother had told me. And that did give me compassion for my father, but it was still awful. It was still awful growing up as a little girl with an alcoholic daddy. Yeah. So that's how I got my start. My mom got divorced. I became a very responsible teenager. She went back to work full time. I was taking care of the cooking, the cleaning, doing all types of things while making sure that I got straight A's, because I was convinced at the time if you weren't pretty, perfect, and smart, nobody was going to love you.
Wow. So, that's a lot of pressure.
Oh, it was tons of pressure. I pushed myself very, very hard from a very young age. Wow. In high school, in my senior year, I met the man who would become my first husband. He is the father of my three now grown sons. We dated all through college. Wow. We got married just a few months after graduation. Now, there's an interesting story that I'm going to throw in here, because when we grow up with abuse, it's hard for us to see red flags or to really hear when someone is offering us a lifeline. I was engaged to my first husband, and a really dear friend of mine, my high school AP bio partner, One night at a party, we found just the two of us by ourselves, and we were talking, and he asked me, he said, Sheila, why are you marrying? And I'm going to refer to my exes as X1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Why are you marrying X1? And, very naively, I smiled and I said, because I love him.
Right. Yes.
And then he looked at me again, really seriously, and he said, why are you marrying X1? At that, I got a little miffed, and I went off. My soul already knew the truth, but I wasn't conscious of it yet.
Wow.
So went ahead, big white wedding, beautiful honeymoon, get married. We're, both of us are working. I worked in public relations at the time. We're saving for our house. We have our first baby. Then we have our second baby. I'm a stay-at-home mom. We finally have enough money and we buy our house. A year, and then we have our third son. He was a year old, just past a year old. My husband and I had yet another argument. And this time he told me, I'm done, I'm leaving. I never loved you anyway. I only married you because your mom had paid for the wedding. We fight too much, you're too angry, etc., etc. I knew in the depths of my soul that this was real and he was really going to go. So that was utter devastation.
Wow.
He eventually wound up living with someone else. He came back and forth a couple of times. It was very, very confusing. It was devastating. I had 3 little boys. They were 1, 3, and 6.
Wow.
I can't tell you how it knocked the wind out of me. The first 2 days, laid on the sofa, did absolutely nothing but pop in DVDs for them, or videos rather, back in the day. Nuke mac and cheese, change diapers. And on the 3rd day, I was like, Sheila, you have to get up.
Wow.
Your kids are down one parent. So that began my season of single parenting 3 little boys. That was harder than hard. I was also at the time in a wonderful church, and the pastor had introduced me to a woman who had a prayer support group for women who wanted to stand in faith and pray for their abusive, adulterous, abandoning husbands to come back. I listened to her that first day I met her. When she left, I thought to myself, this is crazy. Her husband's been living with someone else. My husband is out with somebody else. They've abandoned us. I don't want to stand in prayer for them. I'm going to divorce him.
Right.
But because I had been so conditioned and so trained to be that good little girl, the compliant girl who always listened to authority, I woke up the next day and I'm like, okay, this is what I have to do. I have to stand in faith. Now that time certainly did grow my faith, but it was a huge drain on my soul. And 4 years later, tens of thousands of dollars, we finally did divorce. So now I'm all by myself. He gets remarried. I'm raising my little boys. I'm going to a new church because that original church had closed. The pastor at this new church, very, very charismatic. I'm by myself after the divorce was finally final for a couple of years. And then I meet a man from the music ministry. So we start with dad. We go to husband number 1. Now we're going to get husband number 2. He presented as someone who had done a lot of inner work. He had some demons that he had conquered, or so he said and possibly thought. He wound up being a physically abusive alcoholic who was very, very controlling with me and my children. Again, very, very scary. I wound up with black and blues, a split lip, calling cops, court, orders of protection, the whole 9 yards. Now, at this time, what made this season with this second ex even worse was that the pastor of that church, and this is where some churches can spiritually abuse women.
Absolutely.
Abused by their husbands. And because women like me we want to please. We want to please God. We want to please pastors and husbands and everybody else.
Right.
We think, oh, we have to listen because the pastor, he's the authority and he knows better
Right.
than me.
Right.
Some of the things that this pastor told me were, and I'll just give you a couple. One day I was there in a counseling session with X2.
Okay.
I was definitely heated because what was going on was terrible. And this pastor, he leaned across his desk, looked me right in the eye, and he said, you know something? If you were my wife and you just used that tone talking to me, I'd slap you too.
No
Oh,
way.
yeah.
You're kidding me.
No, not at all. And then it got worse.
Oh my goodness. That is horrible.
Yeah, it's beyond horrible. It's
Oh my goodness. I can't
beyond
believe it.
horrible. Now, of course, abuse always escalates. Abusers never change and abuse escalates. We are never safe with abusers. So I'm going back and I'm trying to be the good wife, praying, taking all these different scriptures to heart. Wives, you'll win your husbands without one word, your chaste conduct. And I will always love God. There's a lot of churches that are not doing what they're supposed to do. They are really aiding and abetting abusers.
Agree with you.
So I went to the church on another occasion after a terribly abusive situation at home, looking for help. And again, yes, was I heated? Was I being very direct? Absolutely. I wasn't cursing, I wasn't screaming, I wasn't hurling a baseball bat.
Mm.
The next day I get a call from this senior pastor and he tells me, Sheila, I'm not sure that you're emotionally stable enough to take care of your children.
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
thinking I might have to call Child Protective Services.
Oh my goodness.
Now, when a person in authority says that to a mother, what is she going to do? She's going to shut her mouth and hold
Absolutely.
the line because she's afraid she's going to lose her babies.
Of course.
This was fiendish.
Wow.
Absolutely awful. So anyway, those were two of the incidences with that church. I finally got out of that church. I was working as preschool teacher at a very beautiful church with an amazing pastor who listened to my story and said, Sheila, you're being abused by your husband and your pastor. You just need to get out of both those situations. So I did. I got an order of protection. I got the sheriff to remove my X2, who went noisily, and that was that. Now, after each of these episodes with X1 and X2, I had a lot of recovery work to do because it was devastating. I felt like I was the shell of a woman after X2. Each time, though, God kept taking me deeper within myself. I am naturally curious. I wanted to know why. Why am I picking these men? But I wasn't quite fully awake yet in order to understand myself.
That's good. Okay. Got it.
Now, I did lots of counseling, both pastoral and professional counseling. So now where am I? So I'm a single mom and now I get rid of X2. Now I'm raising teenagers by myself, 3 teenage boys. If anyone has raised teenagers, you know that can be a wild and crazy ride. One of my sons did have some issues with substance abuse. He had some serious consequences. However, today he is a social worker and he is working with troubled teens.
That's awesome.
All 3 of my boys have turned out really, really well. And I praise God because Jesus was the one that sat in that empty chair at the head of our table and helped me every step of the way. And they are all now educated, married, very well employed. And my oldest has my grandson, a toddler.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
Absolutely thrilled. Okay, so I get through that crazy challenge of the teen years and get everybody situated and settled. I'm now turning 50. I turned 50. The very next day, my boss lays me off because the company is going down.
Mm.
About a month later, I break off a year-long relationship that I had with a very nice single dad, but I was concerned because I felt that his faith just wasn't strong enough. And I really needed a godly,
Yeah.
deeply Christian man.
Yeah.
So I've turned 50. I've lost my job. I'm a single mom. I own a home, have a mortgage, bills. And now I've broken up with this gentleman. I'm on my own. I formed a freelance copywriting service, and I was just doing great. And I'm going to say the next thing, because again, I want the women listening to understand that sometimes we listen too much to our own detriment. My soul was telling me, keep on with what you're doing, creating your own business. You're loving it, you're good at it, you have clients. However, a woman who had been my counselor from church, Christian psychologist, Christian counselor, contacted me about a job that she thought would be perfect for me. So I, again, went against my gut. Never do that.
Yeah, that's
God
good.
has given women their intuition
Exactly.
as a protective device. Always listen to your gut.
Yep.
But I didn't learn on the other occasions. So I go for the interview. The first interview, I'm like, oh my goodness, I could never work for this woman. This would be horrible. Of course, I get called back. Of course, I get offered the job. And I feel like, oh my goodness, I have to listen to the powers that be. I have to take this job. I do have a mortgage. I have, sons that are young adults, teenagers. 2 years of hell. Absolutely. It was awful. That was another very abusive situation. So you see this theme in my life since girlhood: abuse, 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 abuse. So I'm working there, and I'm working in my first year. I was very, very hard on myself. I can remember that year ruminating on all the things I had done wrong in my life and how sinful I was and how awful I was this and that and whatever. So I'm working for this abusive woman. My body is literally falling apart. From my gums to my womb, everything is going wrong. So then I decide, I'm going to start to pray for a really good, godly man to come into my life because he'll save me. He'll rescue me. He'll provide for me. He'll take care of me. He'll love me. Okay. I start investigating Christian dating sites.
Okay.
I determine I'm going to post a profile, but I'm not going to contact any men. I'm going to just wait and see who contacts me. I also made a promise to God and myself that no matter how strange the man was or how unacceptable, I was going to be kind and gracious, and I was going to answer everybody's little email and say, thank you so much. Okay? I'm telling you. I'm telling you, I was way too nice. I was way too needy, and I was way too naive before I awakened. So I get all of these responses, and I'm a good little girl. I'm typing up all my little answers. I get an email from a gentleman who makes a comment about my long hair and how the long hair is like something about the chemistry of long hair between a man and a woman. Immediately, my gut was like, ew, don't like that. Slam my laptop, and I'm determined I'm not going to answer that one because I just don't like it. But then, like so many other times, I slept on it. I wake up the next day. Oh my goodness, I promised God I would be nice to everybody. So I send him an email. He winds up becoming X number 3.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, X number 3 was a man who was a little bit older than me, handsome, intelligent, eloquent, velvet voice, silver fox. He won me over with words.
Yeah. Your description of him was really good too. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, I had a friend, she used to refer to him as Mr. McDreamy.
Wow. Okay.
And certainly, now I have alcoholic father. That's very overt. My second my first husband, second husband, also very overtly abusive. This third husband introduced me to the amazing world of covert abuse. Because on the surface, they can appear, they're Mr. Wonderful. They are the wolves in sheep's clothing. Covert abusers are cunning and strategic. And the only thing they care about is feeding that emptiness inside of them. And they use you and they use me. And they'll use any woman who will buy their lines. Anyway, I fell for everything.
Wow.
Okay, now to tell you how very crazy I was in my past life, we met. 47 days later, we eloped.
Wow.
Okay, now there's the red flag. He proposed, and I remember saying to him, I'd like to wait a year. I'd like to get to know you a little better. Now, this man was absolutely never touched me in any physical, sexual way before marriage, which was all new to me.
Okay.
And I was completely like taken aback. Oh my gosh, he honors me so much. What a good Christian.
Right.
So when I said to him I wanted to wait a year, he was like, oh, Sheila, I couldn't possibly wait a whole year for you. I don't want to dishonor God and you. No, it has to be sooner. That's a red flag, ladies.
Yes.
If they are rushing you to the altar and you do not know them, you stand on what you have decided. You do not listen to them. But I did. And I eloped with him. And we did have a nice honeymoon. And then we got home. And again, I believe that inside deep in our soul, you know, that still small voice is our gut.
Yep, absolutely.
And she knew long before I woke up, no, he is not the right man for you. But I married him. I listened to him. During my first year, I was continuing at my job. I was a director at a liberal arts college. As I said, I owned a home. I was, you know, fairly stable, really well stable financially, had a modest retirement account. So during our first year, for about 8 months, he is very, very sweetly purposing to convince me that I need to quit my job because we are both writers and God has called us to be writers from home, working together. I told him that doesn't sound right to me. Doesn't sound right to me because how are we going to pay the bills?
Right.
Long story short, I did quit my job because remember, I'm a good girl. And after 8 months, he pulled out the big guns and he told me, now, Sheila, where's your faith? Where's your faith? God has called you to submit to me. I am your husband. I wanted to be a good wife. I wanted this marriage to last. I was willing to do anything. So quit my job. We're working at home. We have this online business, a couple of them. Of course, we're not making money. We blow through my retirement investment. We then, you know, a year or so goes by and my home that I had successfully managed for 22 years is now in foreclosure. So I'm losing my home. Lose the home. We did manage to sell it at the end. It was a quick cash sale. We move into a 1-bedroom apartment. Then things really began to escalate. And one night during an argument, he puts his hands around my throat. Again, that should have been an indication for me to pick up the phone, call the police, and get his butt out of my life. We had just moved into this apartment, and I had been so afraid, I'm losing my house. I'm going to wind up homeless. I'll be in a shelter. We have no money. We've blown through everything. The landlords are Christian. I didn't want them to get all upset because here's this big commotion. We've just moved in. So again, I shut my mouth to my own detriment, to my own personal danger. Now, he did make a big promise. He even wrote me some beautiful letter about how he would never do that again. I should have kept the letter. I ripped it up in good faith, believing, okay, it's over, I believe you. Because again, when we are in love or in a relationship with a covert abuser, there is this give and take. There is the good part of the cycle before the abuse. And that good part of the cycle keeps us stuck because we keep thinking, oh, he's going to change, or oh, it really isn't that bad. We'll try again. No, abusers never change. So I lived with him for a total of 7 years. I received, now this is how gracious and kind and amazing God is. October of 2015, I received a painting as a gift from an intuitive artist. And it's got the faces of 3 women. And one woman looks rather Asian and she's blue, her eyes are closed, she looks very sad. The next is this beautiful African woman, her eyes are blazing and she's got some red on her and she's fiery, you can tell she's angry. The last is a European looking woman with green eyes and yellow and she's glowing and she looks serene and beautiful. I never got the message of that painting. At the time, I was working as a coach for women in troubled Christian marriages. I figured, okay, it's for the women that I'm working with because they come in, they're sad, they're struggling, whatever, they're angry, and I'm helping them get to a better place. So then there were other escalations of the abuse, and literally, dear women who are listening to this, abuse just keeps getting worse and you are in danger every single minute you stay with your abuser. But before you escape, you have to formulate a safe escape plan.
Absolutely.
Because that is the most dangerous time. Because he will know that he's losing control and he lives off the control of you and the narcissistic supply that he gets from you. So you never tell your abuser what you're planning to do. Make sure that you contact your DV, your domestic violence center, or call a national hotline number, and you work with these trained staffers formulating a very safe plan, because too many women wind up being murdered. So anyway, there were just a whole bunch of more financial things, and you know, the way he treated me when other women were around, you know, roving eyes, perhaps more, I don't know. But I had been reduced by him from a woman who was independent and secure, a woman who raised 3 boys on her own, who managed her home, had a full-time job, who was doing all kinds of things with her life. I was now this broken little woman who was so dependent on him. And we were now at another church where, again, when I went for help, we were actually mentoring with a couple, a pastoral couple. And I went for help and I said, look, this is this huge financial mess we're in because of my husband's leadership. And I remember that pastor telling me, Sheila, you sound so resentful. And I'm like, no, I'm furious. I've lost everything. And he's like, oh, Sheila, you shouldn't think that way. You should look at this as an opportunity to be a good helper to your husband. Now, this is BS. I'm sorry. If you are being abused, and if you have a pastor or anyone telling you that it's your responsibility to be a better whatever, no, you run and you go to people who understand the nature of abuse. And you get
That's key.
help.
Absolutely.
Like what Lisa does, you know, with her website and her podcast to educate and empower women. So I put him out recently in June of 2018. And it was hard because I was trauma bonded. And the trauma bond makes you believe, oh, I love him and oh, I want him to change. I cried every day for the first 4 weeks. But I kept pushing through all of the obstacles that came in my way to get free. To this day, he continues stalking me. He has been blocked every which way I can think of, but now he resorts to snail mail. So I am, if anyone out there is being stalked, there's an excellent book called The Gift of Fear. Have you heard of that, Lisa?
I haven't, but I'm so glad you're sharing it.
I can't remember the author's name. It's like Vanderdonk or something, I think. But it's The Gift of Fear. It's a powerful, chilling read. He is an expert in the field of stalking and abuse. his major admonition to women is ignore, 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 and wait them out. Because if you start fighting back against your stalker,
Mhm.
it often makes them escalate again, because they see it as an act of war. Because again, they are out to control, to win. It's a
Right.
competition. When my X3 was walking out the door here for the last time, he turned to me and he said, Sheila, you won.
Hmm.
And I said, excuse me,
Wow.
this was never a competition. I wanted our marriage to work.
Wow.
But see, that's the mentality of someone who is an abuser.
Mhm.
It really is chilling. So put him out. Then after I finished crying, I decided redecorating the apartment. I did a lot of art and a lot of writing, journaling. I am a writer. I found that intuitive painting in the attic, and I took it out. And I just happened, and as I was looking at it, I was like, oh my word, this is like me. I was asleep on the job of my life. I
Yeah.
was sleepwalking. And then I became furious when I woke up, because I'm like, this is so wrong. I'm being abused. I've lost so much.
Right.
And I'm on my road to being that very serene, peaceful woman. I flipped the painting over. The name of the painting, which I had totally forgotten, was called Awakening.
Wow. Wow.
So
That's good.
yeah, and it's
Wow.
like, God really does speak to us in so many ways. And
Yes.
we just have to be alert and awake to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
All of this. Now, when I got to the point where I put my abuser out, I shut down my previous online business for women. I felt like I'm married and divorced 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
How can I ever help another woman? No, I'm done. Shut everything down. But God, he had
Mm-hmm.
different plans. And he's like, no, brought you through all this stuff, and you've learned and you've become and you've awakened.
Right.
I want you to go out and you start helping other women.
Wow.
So that was how I got the idea for Awakened Woman.
I
I
love it.
decided that I needed to, as part of my own healing through
Mm-hmm.
my domestic violence shelter, I was paired with a miraculous woman,
Mm-hmm.
herself a DV survivor. She is an empowerment coach. Now, she's the only empowerment coach on staff. I could have gotten a counselor who would do a more traditional style of counseling, which I had had for years. But God, he placed me with this woman. The empowerment coaching is what I feel really did complete my awakening and help me understand I am worth it. And it's
Wow.
okay for me to have healthy self-love. God
Yes.
loves me. God wants me to follow in his footsteps and to love me and to honor me and to take good care of me. That was missing all my life.
Wow.
And then it was reinforced through various teachings, from the traditional church.
Mm-hmm.
So undergoing the empowerment coaching with her after my life of abuse and resiliency and everything, I decided that is what I was made for.
Wow.
To be an empowerment coach for women, to focus on
Wow.
helping women who have awakened, who have escaped their abusers, to now understand you are so worth it. You can take where you are right now and you
Right.
can rebuild your life. You can rebuild your life in a way that will astound you, because those
Yes.
dreams that are in your heart, those desires are the desires that are supposed to come to fruition. Each woman, each one of us has been given amazing and beautiful gifts and talents, and God wants us to use that.
I love that. I love that you said that they can build a life that will astound them.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally believe that. So I'm going to go back a little bit over some of the stuff that you said, if I can, right here.
Absolutely.
And I was just in here looking at you through this YouTube, and I'm just like, the story it's just so much. It's so good. But I love that every time you became more awakened, in my opinion, as I was listening to it. So I'm going to go back to just talking about how you talked about how your theme, has been abuse and resiliency, even from a little girl. It's so interesting that you talk about that, because your dad endured his own physical abuse and trauma from an alcoholic father. He then in turn turned around, was abusive, an alcoholic. And I know that you didn't want the same thing for your own boys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you wanted to break that cycle.
Exactly. When my first husband walked out, it was June of 94. And I remember maybe a few months later praying one day and saying, you know, dear God, I am putting a stake in the ground. I don't want to see this family line of abuse, addictions, alcohol, adulteries, divorce continuing in my sons. It was a huge challenge, you know, to work to that end after a lifetime, a complete family history of the opposite. But I did it.
That's it.
I kept doing it, and I kept making the choice, and I kept coming back. And when I got knocked down, I stood up again. I want to encourage anyone who is out there who comes from a situation like mine, because I am not unique. I mean, we are each unique, but our stories, the theme of abuse, it's the same, whoever and wherever we are.
It really is.
And it really does. It bonds us as sisters, you know, once we have survived it and we are on the other side, and it's almost this compelling need to say, here, take my hand. I'll help you get out. I'll help you become the woman that God has created you to be. So one of the things that I always told my sons was, your dad didn't make a good choice by leaving, but he is your dad. And God does want you to respect him and to love him as best as possible. So today they have good relationships, as good as possible with their dad. They have since they became adults, they have told me a lot of the stories that he told them about me, which were really awful. And I just thank God, because there are so many women whose ex-husbands really pollute the minds of their precious children, and the children sadly believe, you know, and I thank God that my boys did not. That whatever bonds we had in our home were strong enough, or whatever, that they believed me. And so today I have a really good relationship with my three sons. I have three amazing, beautiful, strong, independent, brilliant daughters.
That's awesome.
I prayed for my sons' wives, you know, since my boys were little. And they really are amazing women. I'm very proud of all of them.
That's awesome. I love how your story intricately entwines your faith. Because my faith is the most important thing in my life, and just listening to, some of my research that I'm working on is domestic violence in the church, and just listening to you talk about it, the statistics are horrible, but it's just so even worse when you hear stories like yours, you know, directly, like they're saying, well, the pastor is saying to you, well, I would slap her too. That is just, it's appalling.
It is appalling.
And I feel sorry for his wife, even if I may say so myself, because I can't imagine what she's going through. You know, if this is what you're telling parishioners, I can't imagine what you're doing at home. You know, and so the conversation needs to be had within the church a lot more than it is.
Oh, absolutely. And pastors are just not trained and equipped. And again, traditionally, it's been patriarchy. It's been women, you need to be quiet. Women, you need to submit. God did not create us to be whipping posts. He gave us brains. He gave us strong spirits. He gave us souls. He gave us purpose, and he wants us to fulfill that purpose.
That's good.
You know, I thank God, my three sons, when they were getting married, they're like, Mom, we are never going to tell our wives, you have to submit to me. And my daughters-in-law would never, you know, they would never take that kind of, you know, treatment. But I was really happy that I could hear from my sons, and they would say, you know, these are our partners in life. We're doing this together. Because that's the way it should be, egalitarian, you know, there are many things within the traditional teachings of the church that I no longer buy into because of my own experiences.
And it's understandable. It's understandable.
I will always love God, but God is so much bigger and better than I ever knew.
I love how you said too that the different thing that God has given women, and one of the ones you really highlighted today was God has given us that gut and intuition. He's given it to us, and we ignore it so many times. But when we go back, we're like, I should have listened to that in the beginning because I knew something was off or something was wrong.
Yes.
And listening to your story, you said, my gut told me this, but I went this way anyway.
Yes.
You know, and every time you did it, it was like, the gut's
Disaster.
like, I told you so.
Yes.
And so I'm going to go back to something you said, and I think it was after you said your second divorce. You said, I think it was the second one. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but you talked about, or maybe it was last one. You said, I was so devastated that I cried every day for 4 weeks straight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I think women need to understand we can't skip that part.
Exactly.
The breakup, the hell, no matter how much you love them, how much trauma there has been, there's going to be this part where it's just traumatic and horrible and painful.
Absolutely.
Crawl through that to get to the other side.
That was after, I mean, I cried after each divorce and felt horribly devastated. But the crying for every day that I referred to was with this last spouse.
Okay.
Again, you know, he and I had a very strong connection intellectually, spiritually. I really did look up to him in the beginning. I thought, this is the most amazing man I've ever met. He is so godly. He is so wise. I mean, and we all fell in love with him. My mom loved him. My 3 sons, the girls, everybody.
Wow.
And sadly, you know, as we were talking about the church, I have not only lost my 3rd husband, but I lost the church that we were attending. I was told how, you know, by a certain pastor through an email of the great disappointment that because I chose to divorce him.
Wow.
They're called flying monkeys that surround our abusers because they buy in to the act, they buy into the story. And again, they had always seen him like when I saw him in that Mr. Wonderful phase. That's what kept me with him so long, because he was wonderful at times. I have a lot of really dear memories of times with him, although they're overshadowed now because I see much more clearly. And I no longer even know who the real, you know, I no longer know, like, was any of the good stuff real? When he told me that he loved me, did he ever? I have no idea. Because, you know, they lie, abusers.
Yeah, they do. But, you know, it's a great question that you said. I wonder if, but the thing about it, I love that you talked about, Sheila, is you're not waiting to try to figure that out. You've moved on to being an awakened woman, because oftentimes, like, well, I just wonder, did he ever really love me? Did he ever? It's not relevant anymore, because you have to move on and become more empowered within yourself.
That's a big difference too between empowerment coaching and counseling, because an empowerment coach is going to tell you, like she told me, we are not talking about the past. We are starting today and we are going forward. And I think that that is an excellent way to redeem your life. I have certainly spent a lot of time in my previous divorces where I did live in the past, and I rehashed and I was depressed, and I see how much time I lost by my own choice.
Wow.
So now I choose me. I choose, you know, that I'm worth it. I did have a horrible experience the 3rd time. I lost everything, literally reduced to the poverty level.
Yes. And I was going to touch on that next, because we have to understand, when we get into a relationship, we're not supposed to go downhill. That's just not supposed to happen.
Exactly.
And the fact that you had all of these things for 20 something years and then slowly lost everything. So many red flags in that.
So many red flags. You know, I'd like to say something about that. I was married 5 years with X3. We were sitting at the kitchen table one day. We were talking about our recent 5th anniversary. We had gone back to where we had honeymooned. And all of a sudden, he kind of waxes reminiscent. And he starts saying, wow, I remember that very first day when I met you. And I thought to myself, this woman is a director at a liberal arts college. She owns a 4-bedroom house, and she just drove up in a Volvo. She must be loaded.
Oh my goodness.
When he told me that, at 5 years in, I sat there and my heart fell through the floor.
Wow.
I thought, wow, Sheila, you've been thinking all along that he was in this to destroy you and make his own financial status better, which he did.
Yeah.
And you're right. He just told you. He just told you.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
Crazy.
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, again, part of this ties into my own choosing to
Yes.
listen, to be too nice, to be needy, to be naive. Part of it is also coming from the teachings of the traditional
Mm,
church. Wives, you must submit.
mm,
No,
yeah. Yeah.
no.
Yeah. I gotta agree with you.
Wives, yeah, wives have been given a brain, and we are called to be critical thinkers.
Yes.
That's the other thing. Women, think
Yeah.
long and hard before you say yes to a man.
Yes. Like with your head.
Yeah,
Forget the heart. The heart will change. Focus with your
yeah,
brain. Yeah. And
exactly.
look at the facts. Look at the facts. What's in front of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did look at them, but really I was very, very needy.
Yeah.
Again, I was in an abusive work situation.
That's
My
true.
nest had emptied. I was lonely.
Yeah.
I was this broken-hearted little girl, always looking for somebody to love me so that I could feel better about myself.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question about that, because that theme is kind of played throughout. Let me be the
Mhm.
good Christian. Let me be the good woman. Let me be the
Yeah,
good person I was taught to be. How has
yeah.
that changed for you?
Well, now I love saying no.
Yeah. Yes.
I love to set boundaries and even watch people get upset when I say,
Uh-huh.
"No, I'm not going to do that." I no longer feel afraid. I no longer am afraid to lose people. I have lost a bunch of friends in the last 18 months. As I said, I lost that church. I lost a Christian best friend that I had for decades,
Wow.
and I'm still standing
Look at that. Imagine. See,
because
that's the thing. People think that they're going to just crumble because you.
mm-mm,
Mm-mm.
we can. And the other thing too, a recommendation that I would give to all women is that you spend some time living by yourself before you even
Yes.
get married. I
Agree.
didn't do that. I went from my mom's home, graduated college, moved in with my first husband. I
Mm-hmm.
never lived alone
Mm.
until June of 2018.
Wow.
So
Mm.
this has been this amazing, not only an awakening, but this huge growth spurt for me. And I absolutely love it. I love who I am today. I am
Yes.
so much more fearless, so much more independent, so much more I think for myself. And now I do trust my gut. If I decide, no, that's not good for me, I'll just tell you flat out, nope, not doing it.
I love that.
I do too.
I
I do
just
too.
love it. I love it.
And that's what I try to impart to other women, that you are so worth it.
Yes. Yes.
My mother has often told me, Sheila, you were the easiest child to raise because I was little Miss
Yep.
Compliant.
Yep.
Mommy said something, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
No, not anymore.
Yeah, and that it's interesting because that tone carried on throughout your relationship.
Oh my
But
goodness.
you're an awakened woman now,
I
awakened
am an
woman
awakened
now. And I
woman.
love it. So I just took some notes. I'm going to run back down what she just said. She said she learned the power of saying no. I remember when I learned the power of saying no, my sister said, oh, well, we just need to get you a billboard that says no. I said, well, yeah, because I was a yes person. And yes, then I learned to say no. I loved it
Yeah.
because it was empowering for me. I've been saying yes so long for other people and
Yep.
not yes to Lisa.
Amen.
And so setting boundaries, you said, was very big for you. Setting boundaries.
Absolutely.
And it's so funny when people are just used to you not having any or running over them, they're like, wait, what is this? It's called a boundary. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
do
And they
it.
don't like it, and they'll
Oh
get
no.
angry with you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then
But
you'll
they
be
can have
perceived.
boundaries.
Absolutely, but you'll be perceived as the bad guy.
And that's okay too.
Yes, it
Yep.
is.
And that's now it is okay, right? And being fearless,
Mm-hmm.
independent. And this was my favorite probably, of trusting your gut, that same gut that we
Oh,
ignore, that God has given us,
yeah.
that
Yep.
intuition,
Mm-hmm.
follow it, trusting that gut. And you just say, it's like, that doesn't feel good. I don't think that's right. I'm going to check, just
Yeah.
acknowledging that feeling could save us from a whole lot of heartache and pain.
Absolutely. That's why God gave us
He
our
gave it to us
intuitions.
for,
It is a protective
right.
device, but
That's
we
right.
are trained out of listening to it. So now
That's
I'm telling every beautiful woman that is
yeah.
here listening to this podcast, sweet soul, if your gut says this doesn't feel right, pay attention to it and run for your life.
Yes, absolutely.
And I can say that with a smile now, but there was a time, many times in my life, when I was a very broken woman, I literally, God has brought beauty from multiple piles of ashes.
Yes, I love that he does that. I'm so thankful for such a good father. So I know that you have a workbook that you
Yes.
created. Could you please tell us about that? We want to
Yeah.
see it. Let's see.
It is my Power Thoughts workbook.
You're
It is a freebie, a 13-page workbook. It briefly describes limiting beliefs and positive affirmations and how we can just start to change some of that internal narrative that we've believed for years that is helping to keep us trapped and prevents us from moving forward into becoming the women that God wants us to be. So if any of your listeners would like a copy of it, they can drop me an email at
Okay.
awakenedwoman7@gmail.com and
Okay.
just put Power Thoughts Workbook in the memo line, and I'll be
Awesome.
sure to get that out to you.
Okay. And by the way, you're going to be getting an email from me because I would love to have one too.
Okay.
So Power Thoughts Workbook, Awakened Woman, AWAKENED, woman7@gmail.com. I
Yes.
have thoroughly enjoyed. Let me just tell you, for those of that you guys are listening on the podcast and not on YouTube, you should see the glow that she has. Okay, I'm looking at a totally awakened woman, and we have a lot of similarities. Being raised in the church and just kind of being that yes person, And then when you become awakened, you're like, wait a minute, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And you guys should see the glow that's on her face right now.
Aw, thank you.
So we just celebrate you, Sheila. Thank you for coming on and sharing that with us. I absolutely know that it's going to help so many women, and I would love to have you back actually to really chat more about the faith. And divorce and in the church and stuff like that, and domestic violence within the church, because I think it's such an underrated topic, something that's not touched and talked about. And how many times were you sent back home, right, to your abuser, and it wasn't addressed away, because that could have cost you your life.
It could have cost me my life. Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. And it's chilling.
It
really
is.
chilling.
And you're one of how many women are being sent home. And a lot of times, most of the time, people go to their faith leaders first to get help. And if the faith leader is telling that, you are sending them back to a dude. So we'll definitely have to chat about that later.
That sounds great, Lisa. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share my story. You're a beautiful soul. I'm really glad that we've connected.
Me too. Thank you so much. You guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Sheila, for being here. You guys definitely check her out, awakenedwoman7@gmail.com. Put in the title box, Power Thoughts Workbook. You are a gift, and thank you so much for being here. You guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of A Deeper Look into Domestic Violence with Lisa Nicole Alexander. Make sure you click and subscribe and go back and watch some of our other videos. All right, Sheila, thank you. Take care. Thank you so much.
God bless. Bye-bye.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.